ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Hare Krishna. Welcome to Bhagavad Pravaha online course. Today we will be starting the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. We have completed the first 10 cantos in the previous 61 episodes, and in the next 6 episodes we will be covering the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The 11th canto of Bhagavatam has 31 chapters, and these chapters predominantly deal with the subject matter of the disappearance of the Supreme Lord Krishna and the Yadu dynasty. And of the 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 10th canto has covered the Ashcharya Tattva predominantly in great detail. Ashcharya means the supreme shelter, that is Supreme Lord Krishna. And the 11th canto predominantly presents the topic of Mukti or liberation. 11th canto is considered very technical and quite philosophical in its contents. So there are 31 chapters in the 11th canto, and the first chapter gives a prelude to the disappearance of the Supreme Lord Krishna and the Yadus. The background of the disappearance is presented in the first chapter. And in the last two chapters, chapters number 30 and 31, the Maushalya Leela is very elaborately described. Now, chapter number 2 to chapter number 5, these 4 chapters present a very deeply philosophical conversation that happened between Nimi Maharaj and Navayogendras. And the 6th chapter describes a meeting that happened between the Devatas and the Supreme Lord Krishna. And from 7th chapter till 29th chapter, so these 23 chapters of the 11th canto describe the Uddhava Gita, which is the longest philosophical section in the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. Uddhava Gita is basically the teachings of the Supreme Lord Krishna unto his dearest friend Uddhava. So this is a brief outline of the entire 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And in this first episode of the 11th canto, we will cover the first 5 chapters. And the first chapter describes the background of the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty, and chapters number 2 to chapter number 5 describes a conversation that happened between Nimi and the Navayogendras. So we will discuss these 5 chapters in today's session. So the first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, describes Krishna's contemplation. The Supreme Lord Krishna descended on this earthly planet in the Yadu dynasty to annihilate the miscreants, to re-establish dharma, and especially to protect his devotees. So Krishna descended onto this planet in Mathura, in the prison cell of Kamsa, and then he shifted to Vrindavan, and he performed various enchanting pastimes in Vrindavan. Then he came back to Mathura, he killed Kamsa and many other demoniac people, and then later he shifted to Dwaraka, and he performed so many enchanting pastimes in Dwaraka also. And now, after having accomplished so much in his manifest pastimes in this descent, Krishna contemplated. So I have reduced the burden of the earth very significantly, and through Pandavas, Krishna again reduced the burden of the earth in the Kurukshetra war. So Krishna himself killed so many demons and demoniac people, and Krishna enabled his dearest devotees, the Pandavas, also to annihilate so many demoniac people, materialistic people in this huge battle of Kurukshetra. And then Krishna started thinking, now a lot of burden of the earth has been reduced, but still there is some huge burden on this earthly planet in the form of the Yadu dynasty. In the previous episode, means in the last episode of the 10th canto, we have discussed that Krishna has 16,108 queens, and through each queen, Krishna begot 10 sons, and these 10 sons had more children, and then just Krishna's family itself is so huge, and there are so many other Yadus also. So just to educate the descendants of Yadu dynasty, there were 38 million teachers who were employed. So that means you can just imagine the extent of Yadu dynasty. So Krishna considered that this great Yadu dynasty also is a burden on the earthly planet. Why? Because Yadus are the associates of Krishna, they are Krishna's family members. How can they burden the earth? So there are several reasons discussed by the Vaishnava Acharyas about how Yadu dynasty is a burden of the earth and why Krishna wanted to destroy this Yadu dynasty also before his own personal departure. So we will discuss all of those reasons in the last episode of the 11th canto when we will be discussing the Maushalya Leela in great detail. But basically Yadu dynasty is not exactly a burden on earth, it's a burden of love, definitely. And they are not like miscreants, they are not like demons. However, there is one small reason. Some of the Yadus, because of their close connection with the Supreme Lord Krishna, because of being the family members of Krishna, these Yadus started behaving a little whimsically. And Krishna does not want such whimsical behavior in his own family members. So he wanted to destroy them. And also, another important reason that Jiva Goswami gives in his commentary is that Krishna completed his pastimes on this planet. Now the time for Krishna to go back to his personal abode has come. If Krishna goes away, the Yadus, the family members of Krishna, they cannot tolerate separation from Krishna. Out of their intense feelings of love and separation from Krishna, they could trample the whole earth and they could destroy the earth also. So Krishna thought that let me just dispatch the Yadu dynasty before I personally disappear. So Krishna planned for the departure of the Yadus before his personal, going back to his planet from this earth. So, and also Gandhari cursed the dynasty of Yadus because Krishna orchestrated the Kurukshetra war, and in one sense Krishna has become the cause of the death of the 100 sons of Gandhari. So Gandhari also cursed Krishna. Krishna, you have killed, means you have organized for the death of all my sons. I curse that your Yadu dynasty also will be annihilated in this way. So Gandhari cursed, and this is only an external reason. And the sages also cursed. We will discuss that incident now. The sages also cursed the Yadu dynasty to be annihilated. So the curse of the sages, the curse of Gandhari, these are all external reasons. But another important reason is, there are many important reasons we will discuss in the later episodes, but one reason is that many Yadus were the eternal associates of the Supreme Lord, and many Yadus were also the portions of demigods, the Devatas. When the Supreme Lord Krishna is descending on this earth, he also instructed the demigods to take birth in the dynasties of Vrishni, Andhaka, Bhoja and Yadu dynasties. So some of these family members of Krishna in Dwaraka, they are demigods. They were portions of demigods. So now that Krishna descended on this planet and he annihilated the miscreants on this planet with the assistance of Yadus, now that Krishna is going back, the demigods also have to go back to the heavenly planets to continue their service as universal administrators. So Krishna organized this ghastly disappearance pastime of the Yadus so that the demigod portions of the Yadu dynasty can go back to heavens, and the eternal associates of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the eternal Dwarkavasis, can go back to the eternal Dwarka Dham in the spiritual world. So Krishna just dispatched them. So he came from his planet, Krishna Loka, to this earth to establish dharma, to protect the devotees and to kill the miscreants. And along with him, his eternal associates also came. The demigods also came. Now that Krishna is going back, the demigods have to go back, and also the eternal associates of Krishna also have to go back. So that's the main crux of the Maushalya Leela. Maushalya Leela means the disappearance of Yadu dynasty. So, and there are many other reasons also. We will discuss all those perspectives in the last episode. So now we will discuss the incident of the great sages cursing the Yadu dynasty. So Krishna, Sukadeva Goswami in the beginning of 11th canto, first chapter, he said that Krishna wanted to dispatch these Yadus through the medium of a curse given by the sages upon the Yadu dynasty. So then Parikshit Maharaj asked Sukadeva Goswami, how can the Yadu dynasty be cursed? By sages. The sages or the Brahmanas are the devout followers of Krishna. They are devotees of Krishna. How can they curse Krishna's own family members? I want to know the reasons for this. So then Sukadeva Goswami started describing. So the sages once came to Dwaraka and they performed a ritual, some sacrifice in Vasudev's house. And after that they were going back. So the sages are like Vishwamitra, Narada Muni and many other sages were there. So then the young members of the Yadu dynasty like Samba and many other sons of Krishna also, so they dressed Samba like a pregnant woman. So Samba was the son of Jambavati, Krishna's second queen. So Samba was dressed like a pregnant woman, and the other Yadu boys, they brought this so-called pregnant woman in front of the sages, Narada Muni and Vishwamitra, you can see in that picture. And they asked, "Oh great sages, oh great Brahmanas, can you please tell us whether this pregnant woman gave birth to a boy or a girl?" Then the sages understood. These boys, the young Yadu boys, are just mocking us. They are just playing with us. They just dressed a boy like a pregnant girl and they are asking us to predict the fruit of her pregnancy, so-called pregnancy. So then the sages cursed the Yadu boys that yes, this so-called pregnant woman will give birth to an iron club, and that iron club will become the cause of the destruction of your entire dynasty. So it's a big curse. Then the Yadu boys became very bewildered. We were just playing and mocking with these Brahmanas and they just cursed us. So they just lifted the garment of Samba and they really found an iron club there. They immediately took this iron club in front of Ugrasena, and Ugrasena asked the Yadu boys to just grind that club into small pieces and then throw all the bits of that iron particles in the ocean. So the Yadu boys and Ugrasena did not even consult Krishna. So then the Yadu boys just ground that iron club into small pieces, powder, and then threw all that powder into the ocean, and a small bit was remaining. They just threw it there. So that small piece of iron, so that was picked up by a hunter named Jara, and he just saw, oh, this is very sharp iron piece, so I'll just put it in the end of my arrow. He just put it at the end of his arrow and then put it in his quiver, and then he continued. He's a hunter. So then all the this ground pieces of iron went into the ocean. So then this is the background of this curse. So basically Krishna wanted to demonstrate another reason for this Maushala Leela. Mushala means this club. Maushala Leela means the destruction of the Yadu dynasty that happened because of this Mushala, this club. So Krishna wanted to demonstrate to all of us that if somebody mocks the Brahmanas, someone insults the Brahmanas, someone ridicules the Brahmanas, someone acts in a whimsical or disrespectful manner with great sages and Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, Krishna would not spare them even if they are his own family members. So we should never disrespect Brahmanas and Vaishnavas and sages. So Krishna's family members also could not be spared by Krishna himself. So they were cursed to die. Then Krishna told that this Yadu dynasty has been cursed. So we all have to go to Prabhasa Kshetra to perform some rituals to get relieved of this curse. So Krishna said like that, and they went to Prabhasa Kshetra, they fought with each other, and they disappeared. All that will be described in the last two chapters of the 11th canto, We also discussed it slightly in the third canto, fourth chapter. So, but we will discuss in great detail in the last episode of 11th canto. So now we will continue with this flow. So the first chapter describes the cursing of the Yadu dynasty. So Yadu dynasty is destined to depart from this world very soon because of the curse of these sages. So Vasudeva understood this. So Vasudeva started feeling that I did not take sufficient advantage of Krishna's presence in my dynasty. I have played the role of a father of Krishna, but Krishna is also the supreme personality of Godhead, but I just treated him like my own child. I did not take advantage of Krishna's association. I could have aspired for liberation. So Vasudeva started feeling bad. Now that pastimes are ending and then the Yadu dynasty is going to be annihilated very soon. So he was in anguish and he expressed his feelings in front of Narada Muni. So Vasudeva glorified Narada Muni and he mentioned like this. Then Narada Muni, then he also asked Narada Muni, "Oh Narada Muni, so please instruct me, how can I free myself from this samsara? I could not accept the path of liberation, although the Supreme Lord Krishna is playing the role of my child. So you please teach me, how can I be relieved from this samsara?" Then Narada Muni started giving his teachings to Vasudeva. Vasudeva is Krishna's father directly. Definitely Narada Muni is appreciative of Vasudeva's position. Narada Muni actually congratulated Vasudeva. You are directly the father of the Supreme Lord. Now you are asking me the process of liberation from the samsara, mukti. You are asking about mukti. Nevertheless, because you have asked me, I will teach you. And the question that you have asked me reminds me of the Supreme Lord's glories. So your question is glorious. Narada Muni became grateful to Vasudeva for giving him an opportunity to speak Krishna Katha. Then he spoke about the power of pure devotional service. In the 12th shloka, Narada Muni says, Shrutonu pathito dhyata adrito vanumoditaha sadhyaha punati saddharmo deva vishwadruhopihi. Simply by hearing about Krishna, simply by chanting the holy names of Krishna or glorifying Krishna or meditating on Krishna or praising his qualities, even most unqualified people also can completely be purified. That is the Saddharma. That is the Bhagavata Dharma. So Narada Muni glorifies Bhagavata Dharma or Bhakti Yoga. Bhagavata Dharma is the Dharma which is followed by great Mahabhagavatas. Means Bhakti Yoga. Bhagavata Dharma is nothing but Bhakti Yoga. So Dharma, that which is predominantly taught in the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, is Bhagavata Dharma. So we discussed about Bhagavata Dharma in the 6th canto, 16th chapter through the prayers of Chitraketu Maharaj in front of Lord Sankarshan also. So Bhagavata Dharma is very often described throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, which is basically Bhakti Yoga. So to explain pure devotional service or Bhagavata Dharma or Bhakti Yoga, Narada Muni quotes a conversation that happened between Nimi Maharaj and Navayogendras. So who are these Navayogendras? We discussed in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that Lord Rishabhadev, who was the son of Nabhi Maharaj, Rishabhadev had 100 sons. So all 100 are supposed to be Kshatriyas by birth, but they are all not having the qualities of Kshatriyas. So only 10 of them became qualified Kshatriyas, but 81 of them became perfectly qualified Brahmanas. So one's caste is decided not according to one's birth, but according to one's qualities and activities. Then remaining 9 people, 10 became Kshatriyas, 81 became Brahmanas, remaining 9 people are great Paramahamsas. They are the Navayogendras. So Nava means 9, Yogendras means they are masters of mystic yoga. They are Navayogendras, they are great Paramahamsas, they are great Mahabhagavatas. So they are devotees of Lord basically. So these are pure devotees, they just wander here and there. Then once these Navayogendras came to the kingdom of Nimi Maharaj, you can see in that picture. So Nimi Maharaj has received these Navayogendras. They are so detached that they don't even dress themselves completely. So these Navayogendras came to Nimi Maharaj's house, and Nimi received them very affectionately, very respectfully, offered them worship, washed their feet, and asked them some questions. So now Nimi Maharaj asks 9 questions, and each of these 9 questions is answered by one of these Navayogendras. So 9 questions are answered by 9 Navayogendras here. So we will discuss these 9 questions and 9 answers. So that's the subject matter of the next 4 chapters. So first, Nimi Maharaj asks his first question. He says, what is the good for everyone? So what is the ultimate good for the entire humanity? So please tell this. So actually, in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam also, the first question asked by the sages of Naimisharanya is also same. So they asked Suta Goswami that what is the ultimate good for people in general? And Suta Goswami replied that Bhakti Yoga Savai Pumsam Paro Dharmo Yato Bhakti Radhokshaje Ahaituki Apratihata Yayatma Suprasidati. That's the answer given by Suta Goswami to the sages of Naimisharanya. So the ultimate good for people in general is Bhakti Yoga. Now Nimi Maharaj asked the same question, what is the ultimate good for people in general? And Navayogendras also give the same answer, that is Bhakti Yoga. So of the Navayogendras, this first question of Nimi was answered by Sri Kavi. So while asking this question, Nimi Maharaj also describes the rarity of human birth. He says, Durlabho manusho deho dehinam kshanabhanguraihi tatrapi durlabham manye vaikuntha priyadarshanam. Basically, in this shloka, Nimi Maharaj first acknowledges his own great fortune to have the darshan of these Navayogendras. To attain a human birth in this material world itself is so rare. Durlabho manusho deho. To get a human body is very rare, and in that human life, to get the association of pure devotees like you is extremely rare. So now that I have got your association, please answer my 9 questions. My first question is, what is the ultimate good for people in general? Then Sri Kavi, one of the Navayogendras, answers this question that Bhakti or Bhagavata Dharma or pure devotional service unto the Supreme Lord Krishna is the ultimate good for people in general. So that can give us the ultimate fearlessness from this material existence. This material existence is completely filled with fear. Ahara, Nidra, Bhayam, Maithunam means eating, sleeping, mating and fearing. These are the 4 aspects that are prominent in all the living entities in this material world. Of all these 4, of eating, sleeping, mating and defending and fearing is more prominent than the other things. The urge to eat is occasional, a couple of times in a day. Then urge to mate is also very restricted. But fear is very prominent. So ahara, nidra, bhayam. So bhakti can give us the ultimate fearlessness. So even ignorant jivas also can be delivered if they practice bhakti yoga. And the power of bhakti is that in the 35th shloka, the Navayogendras say, means the Kavi, Sri Kavi, one of the Navayogendras describes how glorious is the path of bhakti. He says, Yanasthaya naro rajan na pramadyeta karhichit dhavan nimilyavanetre naskhalen napatet iha. So Yanasthaya naro rajan na pramadyeta karhichit. This bhakti yoga is a royal road back to Godhead. So bhakti yoga is the royal pathway back to the kingdom of God, and on this path, even if a person dhavan nimilyavanetre, he just blindfolds himself, he covers his eyes and he runs very fast. When somebody's eyes are covered, he cannot see properly, he will just try to search the path. But by blindfolding your eyes, you start running on this path, still you will reach the destination. That's the glory of bhakti yoga. That's a sure short process that can take one back to Godhead. So that's the glory of bhakti yoga. How to perform bhakti? According to one's nature, whatever one does with body, mind and words, kayena vacha manasindriyarva buddhyatmanava prakritehi svabhavat karoti yadyat sakalam parasmaihi. Narayana eti samarpayami. Everything you just offer it to the Supreme Lord, Narayana or Vishnu or Krishna, whichever Vishnu Tattva form that you like. Some worship Krishna, some worship Ram, some worship Narasimha, some worship Vamana, Varaha, whichever form you like, you can worship, perform bhakti unto the Supreme Lord. So then the root cause of all this fear in this world is bodily identification. And this fearful stage can be overcome, and we can come to fearless stage by practicing bhakti. So by practicing bhakti, you are basically depending on Krishna. You are expressing your mood of dependence on Krishna. If you are dependent on the supremely all-powerful Supreme Lord Krishna, where is the question of any fear? That's what he says. Then one should not only practice Bhagavata Dharma or Bhakti, one should also preach. And by doing so, by practicing Bhakti and by propagating Bhakti, one can develop love for God, one can go back to the Supreme Lord's abode also. And Bhakti can completely satisfy the soul. As we discussed in the first canto, Yatma Suprasidati. Our self is completely satisfied by practicing Bhakti in an unmotivated manner and in an uninterrupted manner. In the 42nd shloka, Kavi says that Bhakti pareshanubhavo viraktir anyatra cheshatrika ekakalaha para prapadyamanasya yathashnatah syuh tushtihi pushtihi kshudapayonughasam. When you are eating some food, you will be nourished, your body will be nourished. Means tushtihi means you will be satisfied, and pushtihi, your body will be nourished. Kshudapayo means your hunger also will be mitigated. Okay, your urge to eat food, more food will also be reduced as you are eating your meals. So similarly, when we are performing bhakti, pareshanubhava means by practicing bhakti, you will experience the divine hand and divine mercy and grace of the Supreme Lord Krishna. Para Ishanubhava. And Viraktir Anyaha means you will also get detached from material things. Your love for Krishna will increase, your attachment to material things will decrease. Bhaktir Pareshanubhava Viraktir Anyatra. So that is the greatest benefit of Bhakti Yoga. So then the devotee achieves Ananya Bhakti, and then he will be detached and he will get supreme realization and he will attain supreme peace. So in this way, the first question of Nimi Maharaj is answered by one of the Navayogendras named Kavi. So first question was, what is the ultimate good for people in general? Answer is simply Bhakti Yoga, Bhakti unto Krishna. And now Nimi Maharaj asked his second question based on the answer he heard from the first question. So you are saying that bhakti is the topmost process, spiritual process, that is ultimate good for the entire humanity. So what are the qualities of bhaktas? What are the qualities of a person who is practicing that bhakti? What are the qualities of devotees? What are their duties? What is their nature? What is their behavior? What are their symptoms? How do they speak? How do they conduct themselves? In this way, Nimi Maharaj asked these questions. So this question is answered by Havi, second Navayogendra. He says that there are three categories of devotees. They are Uttamadhikari, Madhyamadhikari and Kanishtadhikari. So these three categories of devotees are basically, they are devotees who are in three different levels of advancement. Uttamadhikari is the topmost devotee, means he is the very advanced devotee. So Uttamadhikari sees the Supreme Lord Krishna in everything. He has developed complete Krishna conscious vision. Wherever he sees, he can see Krishna only. That is Uttamadhikari. And he understands that everything is eternally situated in the Lord, and the Lord is also present in everything. So he is completely, thoroughly Krishna conscious. That is the quality of an Uttamadhikari. We will discuss more about Uttamadhikari. Second is Madhyamadhikari. So Madhyamadhikari is also a very sincere devotee, and he offers love to the Lord, and as far as his dealings are concerned, he deals in different ways. Just like Uttamadhikari, he only sees Krishna everywhere, and he sees, whenever he sees living entities, he always sees that all these people are pure living entities who are fragmental parts of Krishna, potentially pure devotees of Krishna. Krishna resides within their hearts. but Madhyamadhikari discriminates between people. So, prema, maitri, kripa, upeksha. So, towards the Lord, he has prema, love. And towards the devotees, he has maitri, friendship. And towards ignorant people, he is very compassionate, he has kripa. And towards envious people, he does upeksha, he is indifferent to them, he doesn't deal with them, he stays away from them. That's what a Madhyamadhikari does. While preaching, one has to do these things. And third category of devotee or third class devotee is Kanishtadhikari, means he is not very advanced. He is in a neophyte stage of bhakti. So he faithfully worships the deity form of Krishna, but when he is dealing with other devotees, he is very crude, he may be sometimes rough and harsh and rude. He considers Krishna as worshipable, but he does not give so much of importance or value to Krishna's devotees. Sometimes he may commit offenses also. That is Kanishtadhikari. So he cannot deal properly with the devotees. So these are the three categories of devotees: Uttama, Madhyama and Kanishta. So Uttamadhikari is always transcendental. He sees the whole world as the Lord's energy, Vishnu or Maya, and he does not hold any past material impressions or any desire for sense gratification or karma within his mind. He is completely pure at heart. So the visible symptoms of Uttamadhikari is that he has no selfishness, he has no pride, he has no envy, he has no discriminative vision of seeing people as friends and enemies, and he only understands that he is a servant of the Lord and everyone is also servant of the Lord. So, and he chants the holy name of the Lord and he has genuine love for the Lord. So these are various qualities of Uttamadhikari. In Madhyamadhikari we discussed prema, maitri, kripa, upeksha, and Kanishta is very neophyte. He worships the Lord nicely, but he cannot deal with devotees. So the second question of Nimi Maharaj is answered. Now the third question, Nimi Maharaj asked the third question. First question was, what is the highest good for people in general? Answer is Bhakti Yoga. Second question, what are the qualities of a person who is doing Bhakti? Then three categories of devotees are described by Havi. Then he asked the third question. So now we are entering the third chapter. So third question he asks, the third question was, what is the nature of activities of Maya? Now, the material energy is the greatest distraction in one's practice of bhakti for all the devotees. So what is the nature of this Maya? What are the activities of this Maya? How does Maya function? So this is the third question asked by Nimi Maharaj. And Antariksha, one of the Navayogendras, he answers the third question. He says that the Supreme Lord creates this samsara. Samsara means material existence where there is only repeated birth and death. That is called samsara. So Antariksha says that the Lord has created this samsara, and as super soul, he stays within the hearts of all the jivas and he guides the activities of the jivas within the samsara. And the living entity, because of his own sense gratificatory desires, he gets entangled in this samsara. So jiva uses this material body and material senses for sense gratification, and because he is so bent upon sense enjoyment, the Lord as super soul, he just sanctions it, because the jiva is obsessed with sense gratification. Although the super soul sometimes gives indication, oh, sense gratification is bad, you are not supposed to do this, but still the jiva is very much obsessed with his sense gratificatory desires. So the Lord sanctions. And next element is the Prakriti facilitates those sense gratificatory desires. So the jiva desires, the Lord sanctions, and Prakriti facilitates. So thus the jiva is entangled in this samsara, and the jiva wanders in this samsara undergoing so many miseries till the time of universal annihilation. So the jiva comes into existence, because jiva is eternal, but jiva becomes active in the beginning of the creation. So when the universe comes out of the bodily pores of Mahavishnu, then the jivas become active. So then the Lord enters the universe as Garbhodakasaya Vishnu. We discussed all this in the third canto and second canto. I won't be repeating all that things now. So the jiva gets a material body in the beginning of creation. If it does not use that body, especially human body, in Krishna's service and in performing Bhakti Yoga, then the jiva will have to continue in this material existence till the end of this creation period. So Mahavishnu breathes out and the universe comes out. When Mahavishnu breathes in, then the universe goes into his body. Means during one breathing period of Mahavishnu, entire lifetime of Brahma is there. So till the time of cosmic annihilation, this samsara continues. And how does that cosmic annihilation happen? Antariksha describes in great detail. He says that during the end of this period of Brahma's lifetime, there is 100 years of drought, and then Sankarshana, Lord Sankarshana emanates fire from his mouth and he burns everything, and there is 100 years of rain, and Brahma also gives up his body. It's the end of the lifetime of Brahma. So this is the Prakritika annihilation, or the universal destruction. So then the element earth merges into the element water, and the element water merges into fire, fire merges into air, air merges into ether, ether merges into the false ego in mode of ignorance. And that's how they manifested. So we discussed in the second canto that false ego in mode of ignorance gives rise to the 5 gross elements, and the order in which they manifest is first ether manifests, then from them air manifests, from air form manifests, from form water manifests, from water earth manifests. Of course in the middle there are sense objects also, subtle elements also. So in the reverse order of this manifestation of material elements, the destruction of the elements will happen. Earth merges into water, water merges into fire, fire merges into air, air merges into ether. So like that material senses and intelligence will merge into false ego in mode of passion, and the mind and the devatas will merge into false ego in mode of ignorance. So the entire false ego gets merged into Mahatattva, and then finally everything is wound up into the body of Mahavishnu. So that's how this material energy works. Material energy does bhutva bhutva praliyati. Material energy, by the instigation of the Supreme Lord, manifests this universe, and at the end of this period of the universe, at the end of one breathing period of Mahavishnu, the material energy is again wound up into the body of Mahavishnu. So that's how material energy functions. So Maya functions. So this third question of Nimi is also answered. You can see the chart. First question is, what is the highest good for people in general? Answer is bhakti. Second question is, what are the qualities of a bhakta? 3 categories of bhaktas are discussed: Uttama, Madhyama and Kanishta. Third question is, how does Maya function? So then Antariksha described Maya makes the jiva get entangled in this samsara till the end of annihilation of this entire universe. And how does the universe get destroyed? That is also described. Now, fourth question he asks, Nimi Maharaj asks, he says, you have discussed how Maya entangles jiva. How to come out of that entanglement of Maya? So fourth question. So then Nimi Maharaj, when he asked this question, how to get freed from this Maya, then Prabuddha, fourth Navayogendra, he answers this question. He says that, understand that there is no happiness in this material world which is a manifestation of Maya. And just by fruitive activities and sex life, there is only distress, not much enjoyment. So there is so-called enjoyment externally for the senses, but that ultimately leads to distress only. So by money, one cannot be happy. Money is also a source of distress. So if money can give happiness, all wealthy people are the happiest people in the world. But wealthy people also have issues. They may have health problems, they may have relationship problems, they may have threat from enemies. Thieves may come and then take away everything also. So like that, just money also cannot give us happiness. And one may think that, okay, I will just give up this bhuloka and I will go to heavens. I will be happy there. Even heaven also one cannot be happy, because kshine punye martyalokam vishanti. Once the pious credits of a person are exhausted, he has to come from heaven to this earth again. He cannot perpetually stay in heaven. So the solution is, so this is how Maya entangles. So the solution to come out of this entanglement of Maya is that one has to approach a guru. Guru means spiritual master, a teacher who can guide us in the spiritual life. So one has to approach Guru and inquire about the highest good. What is highest good? We discussed in the first answer. That is Bhakti Yoga. So we have to practice Bhakti Yoga under the guidance of a guru. One cannot pursue one's spiritual life without the guidance of a able teacher. So one has to accept a guru, one has to accept that guru as one's life and soul, one has to learn the art of performing pure devotional service unto the Supreme Lord Krishna, and one has to have ideal dealings with one's equals, juniors and seniors. While we are dealing with other devotees, so we should also deal in a proper manner. Then one should also cultivate these qualities of cleanliness, austerity, tolerance, simplicity, humility, and all these Vaishnava qualities. So in the 7th canto there is a beautiful description in the beginning only. We get the seed of bhakti from a guru. For the seed to fructify and grow into a very nice plant, 2 things are needed. Number 1, water, watering process. Number 2, a fertile soil. So these 3 things are very important. 1, potent seed. 2nd, watering process. 3rd, fertile soil. So these 3 things will ensure the growth of a plant properly. So if the seed is not potent, you fry the seeds and then plant them, the seed will not grow. Although the soil is fertile and you are pouring water, still seed will not grow because the seed is already fried, the potency is lost. So the seed has to be potent. Means we should have a potent Vaishnava guru coming from a bona fide Vaishnava sampradaya. 2nd is the watering process. What is this watering process? That is hearing, chanting, all these 9 processes of bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, scriptural study, hearing about God, worshipping deities. All these practices are, especially hearing and chanting, Shravanam, Kirtanam is watering process. And the fertility of soil is the Vaishnava qualities that we develop: cleanliness, austerity, then humility, tolerance, respecting others, not expecting any respect from others, simplicity, non-enviousness. These are the Vaishnava qualities. That is the fertility of soil. If one is chanting Hare Krishna and then studying scriptures, and when he also has a bona fide guru, but he does not have humility, he does not have tolerance or simplicity or respect, he may end up committing offenses, or he may be proud of his own hearing and chanting. So one should have all 3. So these are the practices of Bhakti Yoga. And one should offer everything in the Lord's service. One should also serve other people. First, living entities in general, and better than that is human beings, and better than that is pure devotees. One should serve pure devotees. One should respect all the people according to what they deserve. We discussed in the 5th canto, we discussed in the 3rd canto, 29th chapter, in the teachings of Lord Kapila, the gradations of jivas. We should respect all the jivas according to how they deserve. And one should also associate with devotees, perform Sankirtan, means congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord, and one can thus develop love for God. One can cross over this Maya very easily. So that 4th question is also answered. So far we discussed 4 questions of Nimi Maharaj and answers to these 4 questions from 4 Navayogendras, 4 of the Navayogendras. Now Nimi Maharaj asks the 5th question. Oh, you said that we have to perform bhakti unto the Lord. So I want to know various features of that Supreme Lord Narayana. What is the transcendental situation of Narayana? Then this question is answered by Pippalayana, the 5th Navayogendra. So basically Navayogendras are 9, and one by one they are answering these questions. So Pippalayana answers this 5th question. He says that the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears in 3 features. So in his self-same original form, he is Bhagavan, endowed with all 6 divine opulences. He has full wealth and knowledge and renunciation and beauty and fame. So he is endowed with all 6 opulences in full. So that is Bhagavan. And his partial expansion, which stays in the hearts of every single living entity, is called Paramatma. That is the 2nd feature of the Lord. And his bodily effulgence is Brahman. So the Supreme Lord is transcendentally situated, the Supreme Lord Narayana or Krishna, and he manifests in 3 features. We discussed in the 1st canto also. Vadanti tat tattva vidaha tattvam yad gnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. Brahman is the effulgence of the Lord, Paramatma is the partial expansion of the Lord in everybody's heart, and Bhagavan is the direct personality of Godhead. So we worship the Supreme Lord through hearing, chanting and remembering, then we deal with the Bhagavan face to face. And if we just meditate on the form of the Lord, partial expansion of the Lord, Paramatma feature of the Lord through Ashtanga Yoga, then we realize Paramatma. And one cultivates a philosophical knowledge and does philosophical analysis and some speculation also, then he will end up in Brahman. So through Jnana Yoga one could attain Brahman, through Ashtanga Yoga or Dhyana Yoga one could attain Paramatma, but through Bhakti Yoga, by chanting and hearing, one can attain Bhagavan. So Bhagavan is the Supreme. So then he describes Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan in this way, and some more details are also given. So that answers the fifth question of the Lord. Fifth question of Nimi Maharaj. Now we will enter the sixth question. So Nimi Maharaj asks the sixth question. You said that pure devotional service has to be practiced by everyone. But there are also some people who are not completely ready to practice pure devotional service in a completely selfless manner. So how can they be purified? I heard that they can be purified by Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga involves doing one's prescribed activities. Karma means prescribed activities. Karma has so many meanings according to the context. Karma basically means work, activity. And karma can specifically mean a prescribed activity. As a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, different activities are prescribed in the Vedic scriptures. That prescribed activities are called karma. And karma can also mean a fruitive activity, means an activity that is performed in desire of certain result, certain fruit, that is called fruitive activity. And karma can also mean reaction to an activity. And sometimes the whole chain of actions and reactions could be called as karma. So now Karma Yoga here indicates that people may perform their prescribed duties, and through their prescribed duties they can connect with the Lord. Yoga means connection with the Supreme Lord, and karma means one's prescribed activity. So if you try to connect with the Supreme Lord through your activity, then it's called Karma Yoga. So when you connect with the Supreme Lord with devotion and love, it is called Bhakti Yoga. So with that devotion and love, you perform service also. That's why Bhakti is called pure devotional service. So people connect with the Lord through Bhakti Yoga and perform pure devotional service, but people who are not ready for it, they may perform Karma Yoga and connect with the Lord through their own activities. So what is that Karma Yoga? Can you please elaborate? Then when Nimi Maharaj asked the sixth question, then Avihotra answered this sixth question. He says one should come to the platform of Nishkama Karma Yoga. So Karma Yoga is acting for the Supreme, and Nishkama Karma Yoga is also Nishkama Karma Yoga only, but Nishkama word, the prefix specifies that your karma, means your activity, should be done without any desire for the results. You may be doing your activity, prescribed activity, but Nishkama means no desire to enjoy its fruits. That's why Karma Yoga is specifically called Nishkama Karma Yoga. Sometimes somebody may do some activity with a desire to attain some results. So that's why Nishkama is specified. So we have to perform Nishkama Karma Yoga, he says. And Pravritti Marga means the path of enjoyment. Nivritti Marga means the path of detachment or liberation. So Pravritti Marga is karma and Nivritti Marga is akarma. So karma is action and akarma is inaction. So akarma is not necessarily not acting. Akarma is acting but without incurring any reaction to that action. So whenever we do a material activity, there is a material reaction to that activity. But if we perform some activity without incurring any material reaction, that is called akarma. That is as good as not doing any work. So akarma is not irresponsibly abandoning action. Akarma word is used to indicate that also sometimes. But the akarma that our scriptures prescribe, Bhagavad Gita prescribe, is that one should perform activity in such a way that he does not incur any reaction for that activity, then that akarma is good. It's nivritti marga. So if one does not do any karma, then that will be vikarma. Vikarma is forbidden activity or sinful activity. So karma yoga has to be done without any desire for fruitive results. That is called nishkama karma yoga. So if you just do only karma, that is called path of pravritti, but path of nivritti means akarma, doing activities without incurring any, with detachment and without incurring any reaction. So then, as a part of doing one's prescribed duties, one should also approach one's guru and take the guidance of guru and worship the Supreme Lord, worship the deity form of the Lord. So by performing your prescribed activities, if you also worship the deities of the Lord, deity forms of the Lord, one can easily come closer to Lord. So that's how karma yoga can be performed very effectively. So the qualification for worshipping Ishta Vigraha or Ishta Devata or deities is that after getting the mercy of Guru, after getting the sanction of Guru, one can worship a particular form of the Lord which one likes the most. So you should also perform your prescribed duties, but also worship your favorite form of Lord. So engage in the process of deity worship. Now, after hearing this answer, Kavi has 7th question. You said that one can worship one's favorite forms of the Lord. How many forms of the Lord are there? How many incarnations that the Lord has? So can you please describe some pastimes and incarnations of the Lord? So please elaborate on them. Then in the 4th chapter, when Nimi Maharaj asked his 7th question, the Navayogendras describe, means Drumila answers this question. So he elaborates on various incarnations of the Lord. So first is Purushavatas. Purushavatas are in 3 in number. So one is Mahavishnu or Karanodaka Sai Vishnu, who lies on the causal ocean. We discussed all this in the first canto also. So from the bodily pores of Mahavishnu, millions of universes will come out. And that Mahavishnu or Karanodaka Sai Vishnu expands himself as Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu and enters into each and every universe. That is second Purusha. Then the third Purusha is that Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu expands himself as Kshirodaka Sai Vishnu, who lies on the Kshira Sagara or milk ocean, and then he is the super soul in everybody's hearts. So these are the 3 Purusha avatars. Then there are 3 Gunavataras. Guna means modes: Sattvaguna, Rajoguna, Tamoguna. And the 3 in charges of these 3 modes are Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. So Brahma is the in charge of mode of passion, and he does creation. And Vishnu is the in charge of mode of goodness, and he does maintenance of this world. And Shiva is the in charge of mode of ignorance, and he destroys this world. These are the Gunavataras. And there are so many Leelavataras, unlimited. Gunavataras are only 3. Purushavataras are only 3. But Leelavataras are so many. So Leelavataras means those avatars are incarnations of the Lord who descend on this world and perform various pastimes. So he described the Leelavataras, and specifically one avatara, Naranarayana Rishis, are described. So Naranarayana Rishis, they are twin sages and they perform austerities at Badrikashram. Once Cupid, means Madana, Kamadev, he came along with so many girls, Apsaras, to distract Naranarayan Rishi from their austerities. So Naranarayan Rishi, they just invited Cupid. Oh, you are a great demigod. You have come with your associates. Please come here, sit here, accept these gifts, accept these vegetables and flowers. And whenever Kamadev attacks somebody, people will be overwhelmed with lusty feelings. But here Narayan Rishi is just calling Kamadev, inviting him as a guest, and then asking him, what do you want? Then Narayan Rishi, with his mystic power, he generated so many beautiful women. And he says that you take whomever you want amongst all these women, because you seem to be surrounded with so many ladies, Apsaras. You may be wanting one more, so take. Then he accepted Urvasi. Then Urvasi was born from the body of Narayan Rishi, and then she went into heavenly planets. So that's one activity of the of the Lord in his Naranarayana incarnation. And there are so many other Leela avatars like Hamsa Avatara, Vamana Avatar, Rama, Kalki, Narasimha, Kurma, Varaha, Matsya, Dattatreya. So many avatars are there. We discussed many of these avatars in the previous cantos also. That completes the 4th chapter with a description of the avatars. Now in the 5th chapter, Nimi Maharaj asks his 8th question. He says that, oh, Navayogendras, there are some people who worship the Lord, as you said, but there are some people who do not worship the Lord also. What will be their destination? Then Chamasa Rishi answers this question. He says that people who do not worship the Lord are of 2 categories. 2 kinds of people don't worship the Lord. Number 1, na bhajanti. Number 2, avajananti. Na bhajanti people means they don't worship the Lord out of ignorance. They don't know that they have to worship the Lord. That's why they are not worshipping. No one told them. So they don't worship the Lord out of ignorance. Second category people, they don't worship the Lord out of arrogance. So one is ignorance, second is arrogance. Ignorant people can be educated because they don't know that they have to worship Krishna. If you go and tell them chant Hare Krishna or perform puja of Krishna or Vishnu or Vamana, Narasimha, whomever you like. So if you teach them the spiritual path, then they can accept it. So they are Nabhajanti category people. But Avajananti category people, they are very arrogant. They study the Vedic literatures. They could be Brahmanas also. They are knowledgeable of scriptures also. They may be doing Vedic rituals and sacrifices also, but still, out of arrogance, they don't worship the Lord. So such people will have to undergo a lot of reactions who purposefully, deliberately disrespect the Lord. Such people are real non-devotees. It takes a lot of time for them to come back to right consciousness, but still they can also come back to proper consciousness if some pure devotee shows some mercy on them. But it's very difficult in this case. In the second category of people, take a lot of time to come back to pure consciousness, but ignorant people can very well be educated. And Chamasa Rishi is also indicating that, Nimi Maharaj, you are a great king. You may be having so many innocent or ignorant people in your kingdom. Go and preach. Go and teach them devotional service. But the other category, Avajananti people, they are non-devotees, they are violent, they are lusty, they are angry, they are deceitful, they are proud, they are sinful. They mock devotees. They are just attached to sex too much, and they cruelly slaughter animals and eat their flesh. So they have so many reasons for pride. They are proud of their opulence, they are proud of their special abilities, they are proud of their family lineage, aristocracy, their wealth, their education, their renunciation, their beauty, their strength, their fame. All these things could cause pride in them, and they can deride even the Lord. So such people can sometimes kill animals and eat their flesh also. But somebody may question, there are certain sections in the scriptures where animal killing is also mentioned. Then answer to that is, yes, there are some concessions for people who cannot control their tongues. There are some concessions given, but there are certain dates or days on which you can eat. Not that whimsically you eat any animal on any day at any time. Not like that. There are some concessions given, but these concessions and restrictions are given only to cater to the needs of those people who cannot control their tongues. But the best thing is, but the restriction in the scriptures on meat eating or drinking wine itself indicates that one has to eventually avoid it. Why it has to be restricted? If it is good, you can just do it every day. Why it has to be restricted only on few days? Because it is not good. So an intelligent person, by aligning himself with such scriptural injunctions and does meat eating in a restricted manner, will eventually understand that why this restriction is kept. Means it's not good. So now there is no restriction on hearing and chanting. You can hear Krishna's glories at any time. You can chant Krishna's names at any time. You can remember God at any time. If there is no restriction on remembrance of God or hearing or chanting about God, why there should be restriction in meat eating? Because it is not good. So people will understand that, and eventually develop in their consciousness. So that's the whole purpose. Even liquor drinking also is like that. So then Nimi Maharaj heard this and he asked his last question to Navayogendras. He said that what are the respective colors or forms or names of the 4 Yuga-avataras? Earlier you spoke about Purusha-avataras, Guna-avataras and Leela-avataras. Now I want to know about Yuga-avataras. Can you please describe them? Then Karabhajana Muni answered this last question, 9th question. Karabhajana Muni is one of the Navayogendras who took the opportunity to answer this last question asked by Nimi Maharaj. So he describes, in Satya Yuga, the Supreme Lord descends in a white form. His color is white. And he comes in a 4-handed form. He is like a brahmachari. And he has so many names like Hamsa, Vaikuntha, Dharma, Yogeshwara. You can see the table. And he does meditation and austerity. And peaceful and non-envious people and merciful people worship the Lord. And in Treta Yuga, the Lord comes in a reddish form. And he has forms of sacrifice, yajna. And his names would be Vishnu, Yajna, and Prishnigarbha, and Urukrama. And the method of worshipping the Lord in Treta Yuga is sacrificing, yajna. So in Satya Yuga, the method of worshipping the Lord is meditation. And in Treta Yuga, it is sacrifice. So people interested in achieving the absolute truth can do sacrifices and attain the Lord. Then 3rd Yuga, Dwapara Yuga. In Dwapara Yuga, the Lord appears in a dark complexion, bluish complexion, and he wears yellow garments. He has Srivatsa mark on his chest, and his names are the Chaturviha names, Vasudeva, Sankarshna, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Narayana also. And one can worship the Lord by, one can honor the Lord by worshipping him like a great king. It's like deity worship. So that is about the first 3 yugas. And in the 4th Yuga, Kali Yuga, the Lord appears in the form of a sannyasi. So the 32nd shloka says about the Kali Yuga avatara, that is basically Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Krishna Varanam Tvisha Krishnam Sango Pangastra Parshadam Yagnaihi Sankirtana Prayayir Yajantihi Sumedhasaha. Krishna Varanam. Krishna means the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Varanam means Varnayati, describing Krishna. So in Kali Yuga, the Supreme Lord appears in a form, basically sannyasi form, Mahaprabhu's form, and his activity is to constantly describe the Supreme Lord Krishna. Because this Lord, this incarnation is a covered incarnation, Channavatar. As we discussed in the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj also, the Lord is sometimes called Triyugi because in the 4th Yuga, Kali Yuga, he does not reveal himself as the Lord, but he presents himself as a devotee of the Lord. So that is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Lord Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So what does he do? Krishna Varanam. He constantly describes Krishna. And this has another meaning also. Krishna. Krish is one syllable, Na is another syllable, Varanam means syllable. So Krishna Varanam, the Lord is seen chanting these 2 syllables, Krish and Na. Or the Lord is seen doing Varnan of Krishna always, Krishna Varanam. Tvisha Akrishnam. So in this incarnation, the Lord's Tvisha or bodily complexion is not black. The word Krishna also means black. So the Lord appears in a golden complexion. That is Suvarna Varno Hemango Varangas Chandanangadi. Then Sangopangastra Parshadam. He also appears along with his associates. So Anga means, Anga literally means bodily limb. Upanga means limb of limb. Means hand is my bodily limb. Finger is the limb of limb, sublimb. So the Lord also appears with his immediate associates and also associates of his associates. For example, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is there. We have seen the Panchatattva picture. The Lord is accompanied by Nityananda Prabhu, Advaitacharya, then Srivas Thakur and Gadadhar Pandit. So Nityananda Prabhu and Advaitacharya are considered the principal limbs of the Lord. They are Anga. and the devotees are associates of Nityananda and Advaita, they are considered Upanga, means associates of associates. So the Lord is accompanied by all of them. Sangopanga Astra Parshadam. Astra means weapons. In different incarnations of the Lord holds weapons. Krishna held Sudarshan Chakra, Ram has a beautiful bow, Parshuram has this parashu, axe, Narasimha has his nails only. So, but Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also has weapons. The weapons are his own beauty, and the weapons are his own associates who go out and inspire people to chant the holy names of God and get delivered. Then Yagnaihi Sankirtana Prayahi Yajantihi Sumedhasaha. Sumedha means very intelligent people worship this incarnation of the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by doing Sankirtana Yagna, the sacrifice of congregational chanting of the holy names of Krishna. So that's the meaning of this shloka. And in the next shloka, 33rd shloka, 9 glories of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are beautifully described. Dheyam sada paribhavagnamabhishtadoham tirthaspadam shiva virinchinutam sharanyam bhrityartiham pranatapala bhavabdhipotam vande mahapurushate charanaravindam. Dheyam sada, one has to constantly meditate upon Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Paribhavaghanam, what is the effect of such dhyana? What is the effect of such meditation? So the first is paribhavaghanam. Paribhava means parabhava, insult. Parabhavastavadabodhajato yavanna jignasat atmatattvam. We have seen in the 5th canto, Rishabhadev's teachings. So paribhava means defeat, insult, humiliation, embarrassment in the hands of Maya. Paribhavaghanam means if we take shelter of Lord Chaitanya, he can take us out of that embarrassing situation which is created by Maya. Okay, Paribhavaghanam. Second, Abhishtadoham. Abhishtadoham means Lord will take us out of that embarrassing situation and give us the most desirable object. Abhishta, desirable object. What is that? Love of Krishna. Krishna Prema he will give. That's why he is also called Krishna Prema Pradayati. Paribhavagnam Abhishtadoham. Third is Tirthaspadam. The Lord's divine lotus feet are the places of pilgrimage for all his devotees. Tirthaspadam means all the tirthas, holy rivers and holy places take shelter at his feet. That's why he is called Tirthaspadam. Fourth point, Shiva Virinchinutam. The Lord is also glorified by Shiva, and Virinchi means Brahma. Shiva Virinchinutam. Sharanyam. He is the worthiest shelter for all of us. No one can give us as much shelter as Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does. The next point is Bhrityartiham. So Bhritya Artiham means the Lord will completely destroy the distresses of all his Bhrityas. Bhritya means servants of the Lord. Who is Bhritya? Everybody is Bhritya. Ekala Ishvara Krishna Arasava Bhritya. The only Ishvara master is Krishna and everyone else is Bhritya. So the Lord is known to destroy the distresses of all his servants. Bhrityartiham. Pranatapala. 8th point is Pranatapala. Pranata means surrendering unto the Lord. Pala means the Lord will take care. If we surrender unto him, he will protect us. Pranata can also mean just offering pranams, dandavats. So if we just offer obeisance to the Lord also, he is so kind enough to protect us. Pranatapala. Then last element is Bhavabdhipotam. The Lord is like a boat that can help us cross over this material existence. Bhava is material existence, Abdhi is ocean, Potam is a boat. So Lord can take us across this material ocean. So Vande Mahapurushate Charanaravindam. Let us take shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and also meditate on them. Dheyam Sada, always meditate on them. So these are the 9 glories of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then in the next shloka, Karabhajan Muni says, this is also glorification of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and this one shloka can also be explained as glorification of Krishna and Ram also. Tyaktva sudustyaja surepsita rajya lakshmim dharmishta aryavachasa yadagadharanyam माया मृगम दयित ईप्सितमन्वधावत् वंदे महापुरुषते चरणारविंदम त्यक्त्वा सुदुस्त्यज सुरेप्सित राज्यलक्ष्मीम. So this one shloka has three meanings. This one shloka describes Lord Chaitanya, Lord Krishna and Lord Ram also. To discuss all these three meanings elaborately we may need a lot of time, but I will quickly summarize the meaning. Tyaktva means giving up. Sudustyaja means very difficult to give up. What is that? Surepsita Rajya Lakshmi. Rajya Lakshmi means great wealth, opulence of kingly opulence. Surepsita means which is desired even by great demigods also. Tyaktva Sudustyaja Surepsita Rajya Lakshmi means Lord Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given up a comfortable home, comfortable family with a loving mother and loving wife in Navadvip, and he also has given up his loving company of so many beloved associates including Advaita Acharya, Srivas Thakur and many other, Murari Gupta and many other associates are there in Navadvip. So the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has kept all these things aside, and he did what? He said, Dharmishta Aryavachasa Yadagadharanyam. Dharmishta, being rooted in his dharma, Aryavachasa, giving importance to the words of a Arya, means civilized Brahmana. So who is that Brahmana? Once Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is doing some Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan in Srivas Thakur's house. Then one Brahmana wanted to enter. Somehow he was not allowed to enter. The next day morning, this Brahmana met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at the bank of Ganges and he cursed him. You did not allow me into Srivasangan. I curse you that your entire material happiness will be finished. So in this way, Mahaprabhu received a curse. And Mahaprabhu actually did not receive the curse, but he was obliged. Dharmishta Aryavachasa. And that curse is actually a part of the Lord's plan only. The Lord is meant to take sannyas. He has already made his plan to take sannyas. Because when he was a grahastha, a householder, some people were not taking him very seriously. But if he accepts sannyas, then some people will take him very seriously, and a sannyasi, a Brahmana sannyasi will deserve a lot of respect, will derive a lot of respect from common people. So, because they respect him and offer obeisances to me, then they will be delivered. Lord Chaitanya has made this plan and he accepted the curse of this Brahmana, and Yadagadharanyam, the Lord entered the forest in the form of a sannyasi, and he entered Jarikhanda forest and he delivered so many animals there. He made even tigers and deer and elephants and other forest animals also to chant and dance in ecstasy while glorifying Krishna. So Dharmishta Arya Vachasa Yadagadharanyam Maya Mrugam Dayita Ipsitamanvadhavat. So Maya Mrugam, the common conditioned soul, is searching for some sense gratification because of this Maya. So Dayita Ipsita. Dayita means Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has lot of daya, compassion on such common conditioned souls, and he delivered them. And Ipsitamanvadhavat, apart from delivering common conditioned souls, Lord Chaitanya also, in the mood of Srimati Radharani, he is searching for his desirable object, beloved Lord Krishna. Vande Mahapurushate Charanaravindam. Let us offer obeisances unto that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this shloka also describes Krishna. So I will just briefly say this. So Tyaktva Sudustyaja Surepsita Rajya Lakshmi indicates that Krishna took birth in Mathura, but he has given up that great opulence of Mathura and went into Aranyam. Which Aranyam? Vrindaranyam, Vrindavan. Dharmishta Arya Vachasa Yadagadharanyam means hearing the prayers of his parents Vasudeva and Yashoda and Devaki Mata, he went into Vrindaranyam, Vrindavan. And Maya Mrugam Dayita Ipsitamanvadhavat. Maya Mrugam means, Maya refers to Srimati Radharani, and Mrugam means an animal. So small children, small baby, small girls, they play with toy animals. So Krishna has become like a toy animal in the hands of Srimati Radharani, toy. So basically Srimati Radharani is so dear to Krishna that Krishna comes under the control of Srimati Radharani in Vrindavan. That's what this shloka says about Krishna. And what about Ramachandra? Tyaktva Sudustyaja Surepsita Rajya Lakshmi. means Lord Ramachandra has given up his kingdom of Ayodhya. Dharmishta Aryavachasa means he has taken the words of his father Dasharath Maharaj, and Yadagadharanyam, he entered Dandakaranya and other forests to do his vanvas. And Mayamrugam Dayita Yipsita Manvadhavat means Lord Ramachandra ran behind a Mayamrugam, a deer which is a false deer, golden deer. Basically it's Marichi. Mayamrugam, it's illusory deer. So the Lord ran behind that deer. So in this way, this one shloka describes Ramachandra, Krishna and Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu in his form as Shadbhuja Murti, in his six-handed form. So he contains all three forms, Rama, Krishna and Mahaprabhu. So in this way, the incarnation of Kali Yuga has been glorified so wonderfully. Then that Lord is glorified in Sankirtan Yajna, and there are other several details also. So one has to perform Bhakti Yoga unto the Supreme Lord as taught by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And if one performs Bhakti Yoga, one is relieved from all other obligations also to the degree one is sincere in one's practice. And this popular shloka comes, Devarshi Bhutapta Nadam Pitrunam Nakin Karo Naim Rudicha Rajan Sarvatmanaya Sharanam Sharanyam Gato Mukundam Parihritya Kartu. If one sincerely takes shelter of Mukunda, Lord Mukunda, then one can be relieved from all other obligations. So in this way, Nimi Maharaj asked 9 questions to the Navayogendras, and 9 of them answered these 9 questions, one each. And we will summarize quickly. You can see the chart. The first question is, what is the ultimate good for entire humanity? Answer is Bhakti Yoga. Second question, what are the qualities of a Bhakta? There are 3 categories, and Kanishta, Madhyama and Uttama. So these 3 categories have 3 different qualities. Then third question, what are the nature and activities of Maya? Answer is, Maya makes Jiva wander in this samsara. Fourth question, how to overcome that Maya? Surrender to Guru and perform Bhakti. Fifth question, what are the features of Narayana? Answer is Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. So then sixth question, how to perform Karma Yoga? So one has to understand that the goal of pravritti, karma, is nivritti, means liberation or detachment. So one should approach a guru and worship the Lord's deity form. Seventh question is about pastimes and incarnations of the Lord. So then Purushavasaras, Gunavataras and Leelavataras are described. Then eighth question is, what is the destination of non-devotees? Answer is, non-devotees are of 2 types. One is a non-devotee out of ignorance, other is a non-devotee out of arrogance, and their qualities are described. Ninth question about Yugavataras. So the Yugavataras of Satya, Treta, Dwapara and Kali Yugas are described, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is exclusively glorified. So this entire conversation between Nimi and Navayogendras, these 9 questions and answers, were quoted by Narada Muni to Vasudev. That's the whole context here. So Vasudev heard all this whole conversation between Nimi and Navayogendras, and Narada Muni told that you just apply the principles of Bhagavata Dharma or Bhakti Yoga in your life. So one can easily attain liberation, and don't consider Krishna to be an ordinary child. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But anyways, you are in Vatsalya Rasa, Vatsalya affection towards the Supreme Lord. You and Devaki have already perfected your lives. In this way, Narada Muni glorified Vasudev, taught the principles of Bhagavata Dharma to Vasudev, and taught the path of liberation to Vasudev, and then he went, and Vasudev became very grateful to Narada Muni. So that completes first 5 chapters. Tomorrow we will begin the 6th chapter. Thank you all very much. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.